Okay, so this is the Eachine Tyro 69. Obviously, like, this is kind of a toothpick style micro drone, but this is probably one of the easiest builds that I've ever seen. And I know there's some build videos out there. It's kind of embarrassing to make a build video about this one because it's just so easy to put together. There's pretty much almost everything here is plug and play except for the soldering of the motors and the XT30 connector. So let me just show you a picture of the 4 motors soldered onto the 4-in-1 ESC. What's that, 12 solder joints there, plus the 2 for the XT30, so that's 14. And then there's 3 more for the receiver. I'll show you that here in a second. So that's 17 solder joints total. It took me about 35 minutes to build this completely. Yeah, it was really that easy. It's kind of crazy. So the best way to build this, I think, is it's going to be the simplest, is to flip the 4-in-1 EC upside down, solder the motor wires as you see in the photo from the bottom side, and you can see that the motors are on the underside, not the top side, and solder all 4 of those, and also solder the XT30 from the bottom side as well, because if you solder it from the top where they give you the solder blobs, the capacitor is going to get in the way, so you're going to be able to plug in your battery from underneath. Oh, and by the way, I did rotate 90 degrees the frame so that I could do the toilet style battery mounting, so it's sideways, not frontways, and front and back. So you can just do that because it's an X style frame, so you can just rotate it and do that. So that's what I did. So once you've done the soldering of the motors and the XT30, then you can flip it over and then use the included these little I guess rubber spacers here. Use the long screw, put the rubber spacers on, and then put your 4-in-1 EC on, and then you're going to put some more of these rubber spacers in here, and at that point you're going to want to plug in the wiring loom for the 4-in EC to the flight controller. And just like all the other Tyro products, the plugs are all dummy proof, so you can't get it wrong. You can't. They're all keyed, and you can only put them one way. So if it basically you try and plug it in and it won't go in, don't force it. That means you got basically oriented wrong. So flip it over, and then just plug the wiring loom for the 4-in EC here to the flight controller here. This is the front here. The USB port's going to go out the left side. If you are facing forward, this is where the USB port's going to come out over there. And the receiver is going to plug in, I think it's back, yeah, it's back here. It's this plug right here. They do provide a little, I guess a little cable plug with a little servo connector. I just chopped that off, and then I soldered the the XM Plus receiver, which you can't see here. It's underneath this TPU pod that's holding the camera and the video transmitter, and that's probably the best place to put it. Yeah, probably right above the flight controller and underneath the TPU pod here, because the TPU pod will flex a little bit, and that screw is going to go all the way through. It's a long screw that goes from the bottom all the way to the top here. It's a single screw. It's just this whole stack here is just held on by that nut there, so you're gonna make sure you're gonna have enough space there. If that nut comes off, then your whole drone is gonna fall apart in there, so be wary that this is tight. And that's pretty much it. So as I said, you're gonna put the flight controller on, and at that point you're gonna want to put this camera and video transmitter into this pod. And then you're going to want to run the wires that come off the video transmitter through the hole that's in the bottom of this TPU piece here. Otherwise, if you run it through the back, it's going to be too short. And then run it underneath. And then the 2 plugs are going to go here. So this is the camera and video transmitter. So this plug here, and then there's a plug over here. And again, you can't get it wrong. But if you want to look at the color of the wires in the order, that's how it's going to look like. And then this plug over here is for an LED. They didn't include that, but if you want to wire up an LED, you could do that on that plug if you want, but I didn't use that. And that was it. So you plug in the receiver, plug in the camera, video transmitter, and then put the receiver on top of the flight controller, and then you stick this pod on top of everything, and then you run the nuts on top of the screw there. And actually it's easier if you hold the nut here and then screw it from underneath. That'll tighten it down, and that is it to get it built. And I'm using a different battery strap here. It's from AMAX. It's a little shorter one for the batteries I'm going to be using. I don't like the one they came with, so just if you want a link to that, I'll put that in the description. And then I have some of these sticky pads here from an old Diatone model. I just cut that in half and put that in there, so it's going to hold the battery and grip it nice and tight. And I'm not using the stock propeller on this one. I'm going to do something a little bit different because I want to try out these 3-bladed setup here on, because these are 1104 motors, by the way. So these are what are these? 1104 8600 kV. So I think should be able to handle these 3-bladed flaps no problem. And you have a D-Shot 600 20 amp 4-in-1 AC. Flight controller is an F4 flight controller. Has 2 UARTs. One of them is for smart audio for the video transmitter, which is this, I believe it's this black wire right there. That's going to be for the video transmitter. By the way, there is a online manual that has all the diagrams and everything, so I'm not showing you all that here. You can download that. That's on the product page. Link in the description. And this camera here is from Caddx, I believe. It's called the Beetle. It's an okay camera. Pretty cheap. I mean, obviously this is like, what, 69 bucks here for the whole thing. Plus there's going to be a coupon code down below. So yeah, it's if you're a first-time builder, this is going to be probably one of the easiest builds to try for the first time. Very little soldering, and everything else just plugs in, and then you just basically have to you're going to need to be patient to fiddle with all the parts to get everything to fit in, basically the wires and stuff to shove them underneath this pod. But that's pretty much the hardest thing of this whole build, is just basically arranging the wires and everything like that, just to make sure that the props don't cut anything and that kind of thing. And then I just ran my receiver antennas, as you can see, up the front here, and then I ran some zip ties here to secure that so that they won't get into the props at all. Okay, so here is how much this build weighs. It's coming in around 54.3 grams, and then here's some of the batteries I'm planning on using. This 300 milliamp hour 2S GNB. So with that together, we're coming in at 74.6 grams. And another one I might try is this 2S 450 GNB. I'll probably give them a little more flight time, and that brings up to 83.4 grams. And then if you want to do 3S, which I'm not sure if these motors will be able to handle that with the C, I'm going to try this 300 milliamp hour GNB 3S, and then that comes in at 79.7 grams. Anyway, go to the computer now, and I'll just give you a quick look at my Betaflight setup and how this is set up, at least for my radio. I'm not flashing this or anything. I think it comes with 355, and I'm just pretty much going to go with what came out of the box. I will just show you a couple things that I did change, but really there's not a whole lot to change. But just look at what I did on my setup in the Betaflight configurator. That should match what I have here, and you should be good to go. And I'm pretty sure this will probably fly okay on 2S without any PID tuning needed, but I guess we'll find out in the next video when I do the flight demo. Okay, so go ahead and plug in the quad into the computer. Alright, let's go ahead and connect to it, and let's see what we got here. So you're going to need to have your serial RX receiver, S-Bus receiver, or whatever, on UART 1. Now, if you're using an iBus receiver, PPM receiver, or Spectrum receiver, you want to make sure that you've done the solder bridge for the 2 pads on the left next to the receiver plug port. That is going to be for S-Bus. If you're using iBus or any of the non-inverted receivers like FlySky, Spectrum, or PPM, you want to solder blob or bridge the 2 on the right, and I think that's also listed, shown in the manual, but just showing you the picture here of what I did. But if you have the other receivers that are non-inverted, you want to have the opposite of what I did here. This is for S-Bus. On my setup, the UART2 was not set up for smart audio, so I just turned that on here, and that seems to be working. Under configuration, I reversed my motors in, well, basically I didn't actually, you can go into BL Heli suite and reverse the motors, but I actually just swapped the wires on the motor wires. You can just do that as well. but it might be easier just to do it in BL Heli Suite if you've got everything already built. But I have mine reversed. This is the way I like to fly mine. You don't have to do this. You could just have your motors going their normal way. That's totally fine too. This is just the way I like mine set up. So be aware that if your motors are going the other direction and you have this checked, your quad will flip over. So it has to match whatever you have actually set up your motors to spin. So be very careful about that. I have T-Shot 600 set here, motor stop turned off, and my motor idle is set to 4.5. That's just what I normally set up here. I may change that later, but we'll see. I'm running at 8K, 4K here. You could probably run 8K, but usually 8K, 4K is totally fine for what I'm doing. And I have the accelerometer, barometer on. I usually turn that stuff off, but I'll just leave it on here. It doesn't really matter for me. For arming, I set my arm angle to 180. That's just what I usually do. And I have serial RX or serial-based receiver set up here for receiver mode and S-Bus. For me, obviously you're going to change that to whatever receiver you have. And then I left all these alone here. I did turn on air mode because I like to fly air mode, but for some people that might be a problem for you. So if you prefer not to fly air mode, then don't turn that on. Put on a switch or whatever you normally do. If you're a first timer, I would recommend leaving that off and just don't fly with air mode on. And then for the beacon configuration, I usually have mine turned on for RX set because there's no buzzer on here, and if it's like lost in the grass somewhere, I could flip a switch and turn on the basically the motors turn into a beeper, and I could actually hear it beeping and find where I lost it. And that's it for this tab here for power and battery. I believe this is all standard. I didn't change anything here. I didn't change anything on failsafe. And PID tuning, all of this is standard stock PIDs for Betaflight 355. Didn't change anything here at all either. Yeah, I'm probably just going to fly it completely stock like this. If I change anything, I'll let you know in the flight demo video. I'll probably make those changes in the OSD probably for PIDs, but all this stuff is just going to be out of the box. And here under receiver, I just put in aux4 for my RSSI channel. And I changed my stick low threshold to 1000, stick high to 2000, and then I changed this smoothing type from interpolation to filter. I usually like the way this feels better than the other way, but we'll see how it flies. You might want to go back to the stock configuration for that one. And then under modes, I have my arming on aux1 here, and then the beeper, which is the motor beeper, set to aux2, and then I have flip over crash set to aux2 on this configuration here. So your transmitter might be different, so adjust it accordingly. And I think the only thing I think I changed here is under OSD. Yeah, I just this is a PAL camera that they gave me here, so if you want to check that, you're probably going to have a PAL camera. And this is the way I have my OSD set up. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you have any questions, let me know, but this will get you go. This will pretty much get you going and get you up in the air, and then you should be able to fly it. I'll have another video probably with the flight demo and possibly some PID tuning. I'm not sure if it's going to need it or not in the next one, so stay tuned for that.
Eventually.
Okay, so it's been about a week and a half since I recorded the first segment of this video, and went and flew this. Actually, I've flown this earlier, and then I went and flew this again today, and found out that the I guess this would be the back left motor here, motor number 3, is glitchy. It's not spinning, so obviously this thing can't fly now. And I had a couple of flights, actually about 4 flights, where I was just going to do some tuning and just get a feel for how this flew. I didn't record those flights, unfortunately can't show you any kind of flight footage, but it flew pretty good on 2S. I just flew it on this 520 GNB and on 3S to 300 milliamp hour 3S GNB. Was getting a pretty decent tune on those batteries after about 4 packs, and I got called into work and had to leave for the day, so I didn't get to fly that day. That was about 3 days ago, and then I'm going to try it again today, and yeah, for whatever reason I didn't crash it, didn't have any hard landings. This back left motor does not spin anymore, so I did do a quick test of the ESC with the multimeter. It's not shorted to ground or positive, so I think the ESC is fine. but maybe the motor went bad. I don't know. I think maybe this is a chance for a video where I can show you guys, you know, if you have a motor that's glitchy, that's not spinning correctly, is it the motor or the EC? That's a common question. I think I'll make a video on that from this one here. But yeah, I can't recommend this. At least for me, this was kind of glitchy. I'll contact Eachine and see if they can't send me another one or two. See if I can't get this resolved or flying again. At least show you how it flies. But you know, if it's not, if the quality control is pretty poor, where it's not going to work or fly, then it's kind of no point in buying it. And surprisingly, this is the first Tyro of all the Tyros that I've gotten that didn't work. Actually, all the other ones that I've gotten, 129, 99, the 79, all of those guys still fly, and I've never had any issues with them, even after crashing. And this one just, you know, was flying great, and then I went to try to fly it again today, and yeah, now it doesn't work. So can't say a whole lot more about this. Yeah, too bad about the EC or the motor. I'll find out later. The camera is not so good, but it's cheap. I think that's why this whole kit is really cheap. It's a cheap camera. Video transmitter is okay. The motors seem okay, unless this motor died, of course. Then I guess we'll find out later. And you know, the build was not too hard, but yeah, I can't recommend this one because I just don't know if you're going to get a good one or not. I did see some other people flying it. There were some other reviews out there already. They've been out for actually quite a while, a couple weeks at least. I think there's like 3 or 4 of them. They seem to be flying okay. I just happen to get unlucky and get a bad one, and you know, that happens sometimes. But I just tell you guys what happens to me. You know, you see it like I see it. I don't you know, embellish things or cut things out or add things. It's just the way it is, and so that's why I can't recommend this one, because my experience isn't so great. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this one. Hopefully I'll get another one of these and I can show it to you later. We'll see. But that's gonna do it for this one. And if you guys want to see a video on whether or not you can, how to figure out whether it's a motor EC problem, let me know. If I have time and enough interest, I'll make that video. Anyway guys, talk to you later.